Hello everyone and welcome to Obooks Presents. I'm Ben Crabe and today I'm excited to have one of our excellent spiritual authors with us called Maggie K. Maggie's had a really interesting life and diverse and rich spiritual experience, training and teaching. She's inspirational coach and she's founded recently the Thrivecraft and the Thrivecraft Academy, which I think Maggie helps teach coaches, or is a kind of coaching organisation, or helps train coaches?
Both, Ben.
Both, yeah.
We coach people one-to-one, but we also train people to become Thrivecraft coaches.
Gotcha. And Maggie was formerly an ordained Buddhist and had a Buddhist name for a significant part of her life. She specialises in meditation, mindfulness, the law of attraction, metaphysics, spiritual intelligence for life, love and business. And she's publishing soon with us her book called Diving for Pearls, which is a wise woman's guide to finding love, which is a mixture of spirituality, teaching spirituality, personal life stories, and going through it, this theme of finding love through, a wise woman finding love over her life. To start off, hello first, Maggie.
Hello, Ben. Nice to speak with you.
Likewise. I think the best thing to do was to give a clear idea of the book and some of the really interesting stories and wisdom that you talk about in there. The first thing would to ask you a little bit about your story, how you came to write it, and what's it about?
Sure. Interestingly enough, I've moved about a bit. I'm Scottish, as you can probably hear from my accent.
Yeah.
But when I was 21, I moved to London, and that was really to begin my training in Buddhism, and when I did become an ordained Buddhist. Then I moved to Devon in Totnes. So we're talking about the UK here, and Totnes, Devon is in the southwest of the UK, and it's a very exciting alternative type of place. And when I moved in with my now husband Pat to one of our new houses in Totnes, near Totnes, I saw this little study and I thought, I'm going to write my book in here. Just had this flash of premonition. I'm going to write my book because I'm someone who writes. I've written lots of articles and I've been brewing books for years and years and years and years. Had this premonition. I'm going to write my book in here. Well, actually, I didn't really write my book in there because many years went by and I'm now living in Cornwall. And in fact, my book's just now published this year. And in fact, I kind of finished writing it over the last couple of years, really. However, I realised, this is a bit of a long preamble to say, I realised in a way I did start writing my book in that study, in that house near Totnes, because I was inspired to write a story for a Positive Living magazine called Reconnect at the time. And it was, the heart of it was the story of me meeting my now husband, Pat. How we prepared ourselves, how we found each other, and the kind of spiritual intelligence that we'd use to help us prepare for the best kind of relationship, one that really met us and fed us on all levels. And so this article was published in Reconnect, and it's one of my most popular articles. People love it. And really the heart of the book. And the book has mushroomed from there.
I see. So it was the journey of the relationship that was the seed for the book.
It's really the heart of the book. When I first started writing Diving for Pearls, I thought I was writing a book about inner wisdom.
Yeah.
That's because sometimes people call me the inner wisdom coach, because I really love that thing where we can connect with our authentic intuition, our inner guidance, the thing that helps us make the best choices, the ones that truly align with us. And really in my coaching work now, and this is what I train Thrivecraft coaches to do as well, is to help people genuinely connect with that, their own inner wisdom. And I've designed and created a guided meditation CD that helps us do that really easily as well, called After Inner Wisdom. It's there, and that's what I thought, diving for pearls, diving down into your depths, finding the pearls and the treasure. But when I gave my first draft of the book to an editor to review it, you realise you're actually writing about love. And when I looked at it, I realised, I am writing about love. I'm looking at the ups and downs of loves and losses, but powered by inner wisdom, what inner wisdom brings to that journey. So at heart, it's a love story, but I've done it as kind of almost like where there's a bit of my spiritual adventure, true love story, how I learned to meditate and everything, and then some how-to chapters alternately placed in between. However, I love to read biography, I love to read stories, it's my favourite learning, so I didn't want to write a sort of dry, boring how-to book. So the story parts are full of teachings. Teaching bits are full of stories. So it's really lovely through this whole adventure.
Yeah, and personally, I really tend to relate to and prefer books on wisdom and philosophy when I feel that the person teaching or writing is a human being and shares their humanity with you. I'm interested because obviously it's the biggest desire, most important, one of the most important things, if not the most important things, to find some kind of partner or some kind of deep connection or some kind of meaningful connection, and you've come to the point where you've found that, and you're working on it, and you're not nurturing it, and you're cultivating it. But in the book, you share some quite big and dramatic ups and downs in relationships up until then. And I'm interested in the connection between where you are now and what you had to go through, or what you went through earlier in your life. And do you see those? There's one you talk about having a young family and then splitting up with your partner and getting together with someone else, and how you see those experiences, how the intensity of those experiences then led to later on.
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously everyone's got, or most people have got a story a bit like that. Yeah. And I think for me, it was about, I had a wonderful young love when I was in my teens. And then really for about 20 years, I allowed myself to kind of shut myself down a little bit and not really kind of want what I wanted to want. And this was interesting because this coincided with my Buddhist years. And I think perhaps there was an unconscious dampening down of even prioritizing relationship. And so I was unconsciously choosing someone who couldn't really sort of float my boat on every level. And it was a wonderful connection. The father of my son, we were great friends. He was also an ordained Buddhist, and we had a really good, friendship, but it wasn't really a true romantic, full-blooded romantic relationship. So we did come to the point where I had to, ask myself, am I willing to live the rest of my life in this sort of compromise situation, or do I really wake up to who I am and just and pursue that? So I did make the brave decision. It was very friendly, and it was a good splits goal, but it was also devastating, because it's always devastating to make the decision to separate a family. It wasn't taken lightly, especially when you're getting on. There's nothing horrible happening. It was just a matter of, was I willing to compromise for the rest of my life? And in fact, I made a lot of changes, and we continued to co-parent, and we're all good friends. We have Christmas together. So it was the right decision, even though it was really hard and traumatic for Jamie, who was 5 at the time that's my son, when we split up. Now, and my ex-partner also agrees on this, it absolutely was the right thing for all three of us. And what have we taught Jamie? we've taught Jamie to be civil and honest and real and diplomatic and stay friends. And most of all, I think more than anything else, we've taught him by example. Yeah. Most important thing is to be true to yourself.
Yeah, and even if that involves sometimes something really difficult at first. I'm interested in the link, because I think you write really well, and you obviously this is what you do, and you teach this all the time about getting in touch with your inner wisdom, what you need to do. I guess, could you say what your soul needs to do at any one time? And one of the most difficult things, which I'm sure you probably experienced at that exact moment, was sometimes your inner wisdom wants something and it's going to annoy everybody else and upset everyone else's apple cart, and people are going to judge you for it, and people are going to think all sorts of things. So I'm interested in how would you say to people, when I think one of the big things that stops us from following our inner wisdom, what do you say to people when they're saying, I want to but, or I feel like I should but?
I think the biggest issue for most people is they don't know if it is their inner wisdom. They do not know if this is genuine inner wisdom. A part of themselves that's a bit more reactive and less creative. So I think it's really, there's two things that you've asked me there, but I think one of the things is it's really important to learn how to cultivate inner wisdom and how to recognise it. And I have a couple of tips, very briefly, to enable that. But in short, it's in the book. It explains how you can really learn to recognise what's genuine inner wisdom. In short, inner wisdom is love-based. It leads to expansion. It's scary. Ultimately, the perceived change expands you, makes you become more of who you are. When it's not inner wisdom, say it's just our fear or ego or whatever you want to call it, it has a completely different feeling. It's contracting. You can feel that. And the Buddha used to teach this. He said a good teaching leads to expansion, leads to freedom. That's how you can. A poor teaching leads to fear, leads to contraction, leads to closing down. So that's in brief. There's a whole kind of section in the book about how to recognise inner wisdom.
And maybe we can talk about that now, because I think I'm one of these people who has to agonise before decisions, and I have to go round and round and round and round, and I often have trouble sometimes distinguishing between what comes from love and what comes from fear, because sometimes I can't tell if the fear is saying no, don't do it, or genuinely, or no, don't do it because I'm just scared and it's something I should do. Does that make sense?
It does, like you're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Well, this is why this is an art to learn. It's one of the kind of, and it just requires a bit of practice. But yeah, there is definitely a case for feel the fear and do it anyway. That's why the practice is to imagine having walked through that fear, gone out of the comfort zone, and then landed in the place where you're aiming. And if that then feels expansive and loving, that's your indication that it's coming from love. So I mean, it is. Sometimes it's just trial and error. It's a part of getting to know you. And in terms of what you were asking earlier about what happens if people judge you and so on, I think it's really helpful if you have at least got that trust and confidence in yourself and your own inner wisdom first. Because obviously when you're making changes, you need to have that anchor, something that feels true to you can really stand on. So that because they'll be reflecting back your doubts anyway. It's not that you don't have doubts. When I separated from my ex-partner, I definitely had doubts. Is this the right thing to do? And I guess it was just a matter of taking the time. And in the end, it was such a compelling intuition to move on. And I was accurate. I was right.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to talk to you about the relationship you later found. Before then, Yeah, one of the things about the book, you're very, very clear and concise about, and and easy to understand in talking about going within, getting in touch with what you feel. You've already said about the fear and love, and you relate that to the law of attraction very clearly. So I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit for people who maybe like this stuff, but they're sitting at home thinking, oh, how the hell do I know? I just don't know, and I don't understand. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how you recommend to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, having meditated for so many years, I really do find it to be so powerful. There's two features of meditation, and the kind of popularity of mindfulness these days kind of talks about the first stage of what happens is that you get very calm and you get clear, and you get much more poised and able to make decisions clearly because you've kind of cancelled out a lot of the kind of noise in your head. So the first thing is you become clear and calm. The second stage after that is that you start to receive insight, what's often called insight in the Buddhist tradition. So you start to see things more and more as they really are. And this is where intuition comes. This is where inspiration comes. So that's what can guide you. So this is a long way of saying I think meditation is one of the best ways. And it can be really simple. That's why I've recorded this guided meditation called Ask Your Inner Wisdom. It's based on years and years of my meditation experience, and it very quickly, in just 20 minutes, guides you into that place of genuine inner wisdom. So download that. You can get it free on my website. It's one of the best places to start if you want to learn how to do this.
Fantastic. And I take it your meditation background was Buddhist, because that's what you did lots of.
It was. I mean, I was involved with Buddhism for nearly 20 years. So yeah, it was great. It was such a deep, profound training, and I was completely involved in it 24/7 for most of those years. So yeah, that's where it came to. But when I moved on from Buddhism, and what happened was I still respect it, still love it, but it just felt like I outgrew it, and I didn't want to define myself as a Buddhist anymore. I was becoming more and more interested and influenced by all sorts of mystic traditions and shamanism and ascension, all that. And I just felt, I think I've always been like this really, that I have quite a kind of universal approach to spirituality. So I didn't want to define myself. So I did in fact resign my ordination with a lot of respect, but I didn't want to do that. My meditation started to change. I started to kind of, rather than being kind of practice I did to myself, I started to almost like channel meditation. That's another whole conversation. Where does it inner wisdom come from? Is it from within? Is it from outside? And I go into that in the book. I think the connection.
Yeah, that's I just thought that's a point you make clearly in the book. Some people, when they start meditating and they feel a bit calmer inside and in touch with their wisdom, some people feel like they're in touch with something inside of them which is coming through, and other people feel like it's something outside of them coming through. And I guess you're a bit of both in how you experience it.
I think it's kind of in a typical Buddhist fashion. It's sort of both and neither. Yeah. It both are true, and it depends on you how you experience it, and it doesn't matter which way you conceptualize it. My personal kind of experience and belief is it's all part of the same thing, and you can either go in or you can go out to receive it. In a nutshell, that's kind of how I see it.
And that's kind of the mystic side of what you were talking about.
Yes. It definitely, I definitely loosened up and became much more intuitive and much more interested in my inner wisdom after I stopped being a Buddhist.
Yeah. And finally, on this inner wisdom, would you say, I was thinking about taking decisions recently, and would you say it's a good tip? Because often when people are really searching for their inner wisdom, they're searching to make a decision, or they want to take some action, or they. two phrases I've heard recently: "When in doubt, wait it out," and I heard it nice, carefully, nice phrase: "Let the apple of decision fall from the tree," or something. So that there's a moment when you just know it just goes dunk. And do you think those are good tips when thinking about making decisions and trusting your inner wisdom?
I think that's quite good, and I think therefore our responsibility is to prepare ourselves and our environment for that apple to fall out the tree. Yeah. And there are things you can, so it's not like you do nothing, you sit around doing nothing and duh, it just happens. Actually, you can prepare yourself with a bit of meditation, perhaps, or just a letting go process. One of the tips that we teach in Thrivecraft, one of the formulas in Thrivecraft, is that we say it's 100% intention plus 100% surrender. So there's 100% intention on the clarity. What do I want to clarify? What do I want in my life? And then we apply 100% surrender, which is about, okay, we let it all go. We surrender to what is. We appreciate what is currently, and we allow something even better to arrive. And yeah, that's again another art, the art of putting these two apparent paradoxes together, but that creates successful manifestation.
Yeah, so I remember that in the book. So you're talking about when we're looking for things, it could be looking for a relationship, it could be looking for our jobs. And when you say 100% intention, that's being crystal clear.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to write this book and publish it. Or I want to move house as soon as I can to a better house, or whatever it might be. And then the intention is clear. It's a statement of desire. I want it. But then the 100% letting go is releasing it. It's almost saying, I'm happy as I am right now. I don't need it to change right now, and I'm open to whatever comes along. Is that right?
Yes, it's definitely something you can use for. But the intention side is having the boldness and the courage to really give yourself permission to want what you want, even if you don't think you deserve it, even if you don't think it's possible, even all that. So it's about allowing yourself to announce yourself and the universe boldly what you would love. The surrender part is you don't sort of say, well, I don't need it now, in that kind of batting it away sort of way. This is why it's a subtle art. Simply go, okay, I've asked and now I trust, so therefore I let go. I let change. Another thing we talk about in Thrivecraft is it's not can't have, I can't have it, I'll never have this. Neither is it must have when we push. Must have. Both underneath them have a lack of trust, lack of belief. So you're either too passive or you're too aggressive. Art of having this, as we call it, is that, okay, I've asked and I really trust it's going to arrive, and maybe I'm going to be surprised, it's going to come in a way. Doesn't matter how, I am open.
Yeah. What you're talking about there, about not wanting too much or not pushing away too much, is something that's very clear in the book, which you're good on, which is teaching. Is it effortless living? It's kind of going with the flow.
Yeah, the spiritual. I think this is really important. Still as important today as ever, because we've got such a hardwired hard work ethic. Wired into us culturally, especially in the West of the UK and the USA, which, and there's a lot to respect about that real determination and spirit and all that is brilliant, it's lovely. However, it can make us underestimate the power of what I call the more feminine wisdom side of things, which is more about the surrender and the letting go and the allowing and the trusting and the intuition and all that side of things. Because here's the thing, I'm not a motivational coach. I'm an inspirational coach. And the difference is, I don't feel like I need to kick people up the backside until they get up the hill. What I love to do is work with them so that they ignite that natural spark of inspiration, which is like a bubbling pool, is how the Buddha described it. An inner spring that just bubbles up. You can't resist. Your creativity comes, the muse comes, and work becomes a joy, and it all comes pouring out of you. Synchronicities happen. You start to cooperate because you're truly aligned with who you are. So it's about igniting that inspiration. The practices go to cultivate that state of inspiration, and after that, you're just on the wave, and you're just gently with your rudder. Man, it's so much easier. People talk about this, don't they? The magic, and that's certainly my life and my clients' lives and my trainees' lives, becoming more and more like that all the time. And so, feeling again, it's about trust. It's about trusting your own rhythms, but allowing. You have to be discerning. You have to have awareness, but once you're there, it's such a graceful way of living life and creating and magicking the life of your dreams into existence.
And what talk that kind of coming into yourself and growing into yourself, I think that's why the memory and the autobiography in the book work, because there's this sense of you emerging as you kind of more, and then there's some very difficult times, but there's also there's this kind of sense of the real you kind of trying to burst out and come out, and I think it's good for people to see that, because that's what we're all doing, really, isn't it? We're kind of growing into ourselves. And
I suppose I would say that's a reminder to me that actually the book is not just for people looking for love. It's really a manual for anybody who wants to learn, a manual and an inspiring story for any companion story for anyone who wants to learn how to do that.
That said, can you talk a little? I want to talk about love and a little bit about how you found your current partner. You met husband.
Yeah. In fact, our anniversary was 2 days ago. Our 14th anniversary was 2 days ago.
Congratulations. And
thank you.
How was this different to before? How had what you learnt set you up for this? And what is a profound relationship for you?
Yeah. Well, okay. So after I had my son and separated amicably from his dad, I decided I wanted to move on from London. London was where the biggest Buddhist centre was at the time, and we lived in this sort of urban village. It was very exciting and lovely, but Jamie was getting to be near 7, and I already had some connections with Totnes by then. I had been learning 5 Rhythms dance, which had really kind of woken up more parts of me, and I was really inspired by that, and I'd come to Totnes to do some dance. Anyway, I made the decision, again intuitively, to relocate, and Jamie's dad agreed to come as well so we could continue to co-parent. And I arrived here in 2001 and just started a new life in Totnes. And I guess I had a bit of grieving and catching up with myself to do, and I sort of went to my 5 Rhythms class and cried my eyes out for several months as I kind of processed all the changes. And Jamie was unsettled and, went through all those kind of things. But I also did some inner work, and I guess I was really looking at, well, what do I want in relationship? And the Buddhist organisation I'd been with had at the time, I think it's changed now, had a totally, relationships aren't important kind of ethic. So it was sort of praised if you were single or just had minimal relationships. And I think I had gone along with that a bit too much. So I kind of just reclaimed that part of myself that's always been inspired by conscious relationship and the absolute, the amazing growth and spiritual growth that can occur when you're intimate and you share that deep relationship with someone. So I was kind of reclaiming all this, and I did some inner work, went on the sweat lodge and had some resonance repatterning. And what I realised was blocking it was a belief that I could not meet someone who could meet me on all levels. That was the the words that came. I thought, because I had experienced that, and that with this partner, and this, and this with the other partner, but never all in one package. And I had the unconscious belief that it was too rare. It's impossible to meet somebody who. And also, I think being quite a sort of passionate, full-on person, intellectually, emotionally, physically, alwaysly, I kind of wondered if there really would be someone big enough for me to really meet me. 3 days after I shifted that belief with the resonance repatterning session, I met my now husband, Pat, and 15 months later we were married. So that's how we met. What I see as a kind of true soulmate relationship. I mean, Pat, from me, had never really studied Buddhism, but had studied meditation, TM, ascension channeling, Christ consciousness, the Course in Miracles, all these things, and he had this wide inspiration which he shared with me. And so initially we just had this amazing renaissance of time together where we shared all this stuff. Plunged into a really mystical, amazing few years together, actually, from which Thrivecraft coaching was born, because we then decided we wanted to offer it.
So there's a big shared love of spirituality that's kind of part of the connection.
Yes, yeah. Which I also actually had from Jamie's dad, but I think I was more met on these other levels with Pat. Yeah.
Now, soulmate is a controversial term. I think people mean different things by soulmate, but you're definitely coming down on the side of soulmates exist, because obviously, but how do you define soulmate?
I mean, I just use it poetically, really.
Yeah.
But love can only use love poetically because it means so. But I guess I mean, for me, it means somebody who really meets my soul.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that there's necessarily only ever one. I mean, I think we can have soulmate friendships and soulmate loves, and maybe, I mean, there are other terms like twin flame and all that kind of thing. I mean, I believe what Pat and I, and one of the first things that happened when we met, quite soon after we met, we had this moment on our first sort of date, really, where we looked into each other's eyes, and he said, "I see you." And I said, "I see you." Now, this is before Avatar, the film Avatar.
Yeah.
It was just what came to us. And what happened is time stood still, and we absolutely saw into each other's souls. And in that moment, I knew that I knew him. And I actually recognized that I knew him from previous lives. Yeah. Which again is another, it's one of these things that I've always been happy with, actually, to kind of, even again, if it's just a metaphor and just a piece of poetry, it kind of works for me that there's a sort of continuity of existence. Yeah. Anyway, I knew that I recognized him and I loved him and that I trusted him in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's something you described very clearly just then, and that whole concept of being seen for who you are. And you didn't say I felt a kind of rush of blood to the head, or we had to it wasn't the kind of, you were using slightly different language to.
Yeah, it wasn't giddy.
It wasn't giddy.
It was really calm, and it was like, "Oh, hello, yeah, we're going to be together, aren't we?" Yeah. And there was like no posturing and disguising and trying to win over, or no sort of dynamics about push pull or nothing, none of that sort of stuff. It was just like, oh, right.
Yeah. So rather than this kind of we're off on the rocket ship, I don't know what's happening to me, it was actually grounded and quite calm.
It was. Although it took me, after that I see you thing, it took me a couple of weeks to kind of go, oh. Yeah. But yeah, after that it was just obvious we'd be together.
That's really interesting, and well, I think it's guys and girls would benefit from.
Oh, definitely. Yes, definitely.
And thinking about.
Pat did his preparations before he met me as well. He practiced a meditation that he'd learned from Wayne Dyer, the great American spiritual teacher, and it's a manifestation practice that we call the Om practice, and we still teach at Thrivecraft. And it's really effective, and that's what he used. And it uses this 100% intention and 100% surrender in its nature. Yeah.
Lovely. And so can you tell us a bit about what you're doing at the moment and where we can find you and your kind of work and that kind of thing?
Sure thing. Okay, so we set up Thrivecraft Coaching together back in 2003 in the Totnes area, and we lived and worked there until 2 years ago. We now live in Cornwall, which is just over the border. It's the very last county of the UK in the southwest tip, and it's quite Celtic and wild and lovely. And it's where Pat grew up. So we've gone back to where he used to live. And now Jamie he's nearly 23. He lives on his own. In fact, we left him in the house in Devon. He's independent. He's great. He loves it there. And he's, having a great life. And we have now moved into what we've been visualizing and cultivating for years and years and years, which is a retreat center, a small retreat center. It's surrounded by 100 acres on the river, absolutely beautiful. And we now run our Thrivecraft activities here. So I coach one-to-one by Skype, or people come here. Plus I run training courses. So this is what I'm doing the last 4 years, about to start the 4th year of accredited Thrivecraft coach training, which is an absolute joy to teach people all this particular approach to coaching, which is life, business, and spiritual coaching together, and relationship coaching together. Yeah,
because some people can come to you. So if, say, they might want to make a specific shift in their life, or they generally want to get in touch with their inner wisdom, but you also, if they're starting a business, or one-to-one coaching, it's quite diverse in terms of what you can offer, and you've done a lot of business.
Because I've been involved in lots of businesses. I offer, so I don't just train people to become coaches. I train them to set up in business, or therapists who want business coaching, or whatever you're doing, eco projects or whatever it is. I do that. And I also train people to become meditation teachers. So if you've got a bit of practice and you would like an accreditation as a meditation teacher, I've got a course. And I should say also, these two trainings, the Thrivecraft coach training and the meditation teacher training, you can do distance learning. So I've got coaches in America. So that's a possibility as well. And
so your retreat centre's in?
It's in Cornwall. It's near the first town in Cornwall, so it's just over the river. And it's actually only a 45-minute drive from Totnes, so I'm still connection there.
Great. So we can reach you in Cornwall if we can get there, or we can work with you online. And
of course. I'm moving in. I'm going to be putting lots of courses online this year. That's one of the things, and hopefully writing some more books. And also I'm going to be recording a number of guided meditation audios, so plenty more to come.
Great. Well, we'll put some links to your guided meditations on this video, and also I do, if you're interested in any of those themes that we've been talking about, I do recommend you pick up the book, because when you're talking about living from love, the law of attraction, that kind of effortless living and meditation, I found I'd read a lot about that kind of things, doing my job, you'd expect it, but I found that a few things really clicked with me reading what you'd written, and it was I think you got a very deep understanding of it, and it was very clear. And I think especially if you're interested in this kind of thing and you're wrestling with it, definitely pick up the book for that reason, because it will, it facilitates the understanding, or did with me.
Right, well, that's fantastic. I've been getting great feedback so far, and I'm really, really delighted with that. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and maybe we'll have you on again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we haven't mentioned my website, but I guess
I can put it on. Yeah.
Well, it's maggieKwisdom.com. maggieKwisdom.com. You'll find me there.
Fantastic. Thank you.